Hello, I'm Alison Griffin from Forest Recycling Project, a local charity, and I'm here to talk about writing an organisational strategy with the North London Waste Authority training workshops. Normally we would start with introductions, and what I want to start with where everybody is at with their strategy. Different people are in different places. It's fine wherever you are. The purpose of this workshop is to move everyone forward in terms of being well positioned with your strategy. So you might be in any of these places, you might have a strategy or not, or somewhere in between. But where are you at now? So today's session is going to cover why you would go to the trouble of writing a strategy, where you might start, who you're going to involve and when, how to finish and present your strategy document, and how to implement and evaluate your strategy. In person, this would take about 45 minutes for the presentation and then questions, and we would share the slides. So you're going to start from what your charity is trying to achieve. So obviously a strategy has to go in a direction, and the direction is to deliver against the aims of your organisation. So it maybe seems obvious. You probably have something written down somewhere, especially if you have constitutional documents, but remind yourself and everyone involved, what are you trying to achieve as a charity? This helps you have a clear direction and avoid mission drift, because everything you're doing should be working towards your charitable aims. Just as an aside, what is mission drift? It's when you start to do things which, although they may be very worthwhile, are not working directly towards your organisational aims and objectives, what your mission is. It's a surprisingly common and a surprisingly tempting situation. An example would be that an environmental charity starts to do work focused around poverty, perhaps because there's some funding available, and perhaps just because it appeals to them because it's very worthwhile work, but their charitable mission is environmental conservation. So your strategy needs to work to your organisational aims, not general charitable good. So just as a note right now, it might be good just to write down for yourself what your headline organisational aims are. Just remind yourself. And another thing you might want to do is think about how long you want to write a strategy for. Of course, you hope to be around in 30 years' time, but perhaps writing a strategy for 3 years or 1 year might be most helpful to you. So you choose a time frame before you start. So remind yourself what you're trying to achieve and decide how long a strategy you're writing. If you're not sure, something like 3 years would make sense, maybe 1 year if you're a newer organisation. So next, we're going to move on to a discussion in the session, or I'll give you my thoughts right now on why a strategy is helpful. And I think this is an important thing to consider at first, because writing a strategy is going to be work, so you want to be sure it's worthwhile for you. So here are my suggestions. If you do a strategy fairly well, it's going to involve everyone in the organisation getting on the same page in terms of what you're trying to do right now and why. And that is very helpful than everybody being on different pages or unsure. So you're all going to know what you're trying to do now and why. It guides you to where you're going to put your time and resources, and by extension, where you're not going to put your time and resources. This is hard but essential, because I'm expecting you probably have very limited time and resources, so it's really helpful to make a decision of how you're going to use them, of what is most important to you right now. And related to that, it's going to tell you what you're going to say yes to and what you're going to say no to, because we're lucky in the community sector, a lot of opportunities arise, maybe partnerships, events, funding, projects, but you have those limited time and resources, and you need to say which ones you're going to say yes to, what's most important, because you know what your current goals are. And it informs your fundraising and partnership development and actively supports them. You can, for example, articulate to a funder what you want to do with their money and why, and perhaps how you've considered different options and carefully selected this as the best approach. So you're much more likely to talk effectively to funders or people who you might want to partner with, explaining what your priorities are and why. So, in short, a strategy is going to make you more productive, more purposeful, more effective in making decisions, and more successful at fundraising. Sounds good? So, let's move on. Now, you're going to involve a lot of people in writing your strategy, but the people in charge, maybe everyone, it depends on the size of your organisation, have an important function to consider your organisational health overall, because you are not going to be able to deliver your aims and mission if you are struggling on any front, any important front, like financially, of course. So whilst your strategy will mostly be focused on your aims and mission, remember a vital part of your mission is to survive and hopefully thrive as an organisation. So do give some time, and if you haven't done it recently, maybe before you launch into strategy, just to have a bit of reflection and make any notes as to, is there anything you really need to get sorted in your strategy period, and probably as soon as possible, in order to make the strategy work. So an example might be that you need to get better financial management, that you feel you really must recruit your first member of staff, that you have a problematic lease situation you need to sort out. Other things that might be useful to do are things like SWOT or pest analysis, just looking at where you are and what challenges you're facing. All of this can be written into your strategy if you want it to be, but it's just a reminder. The people in charge need to keep an eye on organisational health, and it's absolutely fine to be saying in your strategy, a key thing we want to do in the next 2 years is to recruit more trustees or a member of staff or whatever it is that you need. So make sure you do that. And I'm suggesting here you might just jot down anything important you know needs to be included in your strategy to maintain organisational health. There may not be anything. I'm sure there's a long wish list, mostly involving money and people, but it's just anything that you need in the strategy. So moving on. Oops. So this is the biggest bit of your strategy, and it's going to be most effective and most efficient if you can get everyone together. Everyone who knows your organisation. So that might be committee, trustees, staff, certainly, key volunteers, you decide. And in terms of this next bit, you're the expert on your organisation. So you decide. If you say, Alison, it's 2 people, it's 2 people. If you need a conference, it's a conference. But you get everyone together who knows your organisation. And you're going to be brainstorming wish lists and ideas lists to start off. Things like flip charts and post-it notes and a good supply of refreshments are often very useful. And if you're brainstorming and there's quite a few of you, it can be good to break down into groups. So you might have flip chart pages, or you can have pieces of paper which say, what do we do best? These are my suggestions, you choose yours. What should we do more of? What new things could we do? What change would make the biggest difference? And what must we not stop doing? Or pick your own prompts. And you're all going to brainstorm on those. You might allow 45 minutes for this or something of that ilk. So oops, sorry, I've got something flashing on my screen. So yes, so you're going to brainstorm around this. Post-it notes can be very useful to make quick records of your thoughts. They're also particularly useful to make sure you get everything that people want to say if you are pressured for time, or maybe some people are a little more articulate and talkative than others. So that's going to be your starting point. So you're starting to get everyone thinking about where you're at and where you need to go next. And then the second part, you would probably be coming back together, you decide, and discuss looking at everything, maybe people reporting back. What are the main themes? And you will very likely find there are some main themes coming out of where you're at and where you should ideally go next. And from those, you can start to try to get a clear idea, and it may well be obvious of what the priorities in your next strategy are. So it's probably a half day, ideally, certainly 2 hours of just brainstorming where you're at and where you're going next, and then trying to summarize and draw some themes together. A couple of things. Don't worry if everyone in the room doesn't know about the challenges of funding and compliance. For example, the leadership can always make sure things are incorporated later, those things we said about organisational health, unless the staff want to discuss them or you want to discuss them together. So you're going to have a reflection on the main themes that are coming out together, and develop those ideas as much as is practical in the time you have available. So I should have said at the beginning of this, you might want to start reminding everybody what your aims and mission are as a project or charity. Remind everybody how utterly brilliant you are. You're doing wonderful work, and just do a scene setting of, we're going to write a strategy for what next. But again, just make sure everybody's got those aims in the front of their mind. And at the end of the session, you are going to tell people what's going to happen next, which will be up to you, but my suggestions are coming next. So think about who's going to write this up, ideally before the group session, or certainly before the end of it, including so you can let everyone know. And someone or a small group is going to write it up as a draft strategy and take it back to everyone. So this is my suggestion, that it will probably cover an introduction to the organisation. If you want, this might be something you've got written elsewhere. Those aims, vision, mission. Different people use different terminology. It's whatever you've got, really. And if you haven't got them, it might be worth getting that written before starting, but I think most people have them. And your current strategic priorities and anything you want to say about them. So, you know, we want to extend our youth group services because X, the things you've come up with in your session. And a page or two of A4 at this stage is fine. You can develop it later if you want, but it's really just getting to the crux of what you're doing. It's up to you. You might want to gloss it up with fonts and pictures later. So what are the most important features of this task? Obviously that it gets done, that it's not going to sit in someone's in tray, that it reflects the discussions, even if it develops them, so it's not a complete shock to the people who were in your session just now. And this is really important as well. The strategy needs to be realistic. I would strongly recommend against writing a strategy that is not realistic and ideally smart. Just remember, too many priorities means no priorities. If you have far more in there than you can do in the time period, you don't have priorities, in fact. So I would strongly recommend, you know, keep the number of priorities down, the new things that you're going to do, so that you can realistically achieve them and everyone is clear what they are. Can you use a consultant or helper? It's often a thought is, can we just bypass this and ask someone, maybe pro bono, some sort of consultant just to write a strategy for you? You can get help, but if you remember of reasons why a strategy is helpful in terms of bringing everyone together and being clear and being right for you, that can only be written by you, and you can write it. Any organization can write it. So, by all means, if you know someone who might be able to help you, maybe who's good at writing things or has done this before, by all means, ask them to help. But you have got this, you can do this, and be careful not to get a strategy written which is a tick box exercise, because it's waste of your time and it could lead to you misdirecting your resources, in fact. So do it yourself, but take on any help. With the voluntary sector, we take on any help we can. So congratulations, you are nearly there. You've got it, you've got everybody's input. This is really good stuff, whatever you've got, and you've got a write up. So now you've got your write up and you're going to agree it and share it. So, oops, sorry, that's gone a bit strange, but what are you going to do with your outline strategy? And a reminder, the most important audience for your strategy at all stages is everyone involved in your organisation, because they are going to be implementing it and talking it to people about it. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go back to the people who were in that room and share what you've done, maybe sense check it with you, explain if you've added anything in or developed something, and hopefully they all think it looks good, beyond which you would be thinking about who else you want to share your strategy with. And the most common thing would be to put it on your website. You might share it in its entirety or in part with funders, your local authority, other people, but talk about it amongst yourselves as well. Now, at this stage, you might want to find your best pictures. You might want to make something that looks nice and put it on your website. It's totally optional, but yes, you can dress it up a bit, make it look like a nice document online, make it into a PDF. And nice to share. You might add more information about your organisation and its impact if it might be looked at by other people. And a tip for this would be, a lot of organisations and charities have a strategy on their website. So by all means, go and look at what other people have done and take anything that works for you. But it's your document. You do it however you want it. Introduce your charity, maybe say how the strategy process went, who was involved and what you've decided, and lay it out, but totally up to you. The main thing is you have your strategy. And congratulations. However, the work of implementing and reviewing a strategy is ongoing. Once you've got it in place, you do need to think about, if you haven't already, who's going to be actioning the different parts of it, who's going to be monitoring and evaluating it, how you're going to recognise success, and how you're going to keep everything on track. And this needs to be an important part of your management, and you decide how that works best for you within your organisation. And right now is when, if you don't already get the point that you don't want too many priorities or to have overstretched yourself, then you will get it now, because it really needs to be realistic, as you can see now. But you should be actively managing it and aware of who's doing what. One other tip would be, if you have a 3-year strategy, you do not need to start everything in year 1. There may be things that you need to get on with sooner rather than later. But a lot of people worry that they get to the end of the first year and they're only working on 2 of their 3 priorities. Well, that sounds quite reasonable to me in a 3-year strategy, maybe even 1 of the 3 priorities. So it's fine and sensible and good management to stagger what you're going to do when, particularly if you've got a very low number of people for your ambitions, which most of us do. Now, talking about things like monitoring and evaluating, there are other sessions in this training package which should help you with that. And hopefully having a strategy will help you with other things like fundraising. So thank you very much. And in real life, or if anyone wants to contact me, I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you very much.